Dolphins fans, what is going on? It's Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network. The theme of the offseason, which has been money, financials, cost saving, that ain't going anywhere. And that is continuing in today's video because we're going to be talking about a money saving opportunity in today's video. However, that money saving opportunity would mean parting ways with what, in my opinion, would be a top 2 or 3 cornerback that this organization has ever seen. And obviously, we're talking about Miami Dolphins cornerback Xavien Howard, who has spent his entire 8-year NFL career with the Miami Dolphins, has collected 29 interceptions throughout the process. But before I jump into this topic, take a little deeper dive, I want to hear from you because in the event the Miami Dolphins release Xavien Howard this offseason, who would you like to see replace him on that boundary, on that open boundary position opposite Jalen Ramsey? Like I said, we're going to jump into some options, some in-house guys, some free agents, draft, trade. We're going to get to all that in here, but let's do some of the Xavien Howard bona fides because, man, it's a nice list. 4-time Pro Bowler, named first-team All-Pro back in 2020, led the entire NFL in interceptions twice, both in 2020 and 2018. Xavien Howard he's kind of one of those players. I think about me growing up and being a Dolphins fan, like I loved Dan Marino, but it's just a little bit early for me to completely understand the Dan Marino career and everything. Obviously, throughout time, I've been able to do my own research, and I obviously respect Dan Marino for what he was. But for me, it's like Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas. Like those are your faces of the organization. There is a generation of Dolphins fans that really don't know Miami Dolphins football without a guy like Xavien Howard. So yeah, maybe it's not like people of my age and now, maybe it's not like, he's not the entire face of the organization. To a group of people out there, I would be willing to say that, man, he's kind of one of those faces of this organization. But we say all these positive things, and it's always great. We all love Xavien Howard, but man, here's the issue. He's turning 31 years old just before the season starts. He's been battling injuries. He battled the hell out of injuries 2 years ago, battled them again at the end of this last offseason. And here's the kicker. Here's the number one. He's due a lot of that coin. He's due a lot of money this upcoming season, a season that we're going to have to make some moves financially to make things work out. So a potential release could very well be on the horizon. He is signed through 2026. However, he brings a cap hit in 2024 of $25.9 million. That's the second most of all the cornerbacks in the entire NFL. Coincidentally enough, we also have number one. Jalen Ramsey is number one, and Xavien Howard is right there. So do you think this team is going to go into the 2024 NFL season with the 2 highest paid NFL cornerbacks after everything that we just talked about with Xavien Howard? So like I said, entering the age 31 season, only recording a single interception in each of his last 2 seasons, it's sort of hard. Like I said, he's one of those face guys. He's one of those face of the franchise guys. Can you justify us paying him as a top 2-3 cornerback in the entire NFL? Here's the other kicker, though. If you wanted to release him, you can cut him with a post-June 1st designation, which will save $18.5 million against the 2024 salary cap. I'm not a huge numbers guy, financials guy, salary cap guy, so I have to ask these questions. But I tell you what, a post-June 1 designation saving you $18.5 million, that's going to be an option that the Miami Dolphins are going to pursue. Now, if you take a look at what we're working with in 2024, so outside of Xavien Howard, you got Jalen Ramsey, you got Keon Crossan, you got Cam Smith, you got Kader Kohu, and Ethan Bonner. Those are your cornerbacks that you have under contract. So even if Cameron Smith, let's say he steps into a bigger role in 2024, given those names, man, you can make it work, but you're probably going to want some reinforcements, especially with the way injuries have hit our secondary the last couple of years. You're probably going to want some reinforcements at that position. But in regards to replacing Xavien Howard, like I said, if he is cut, you look at Cam Smith and you're like, that's got to be your best in-house option for that role. You got Jalen Ramsey on the boundary. You got Kader Kohu, who's going to be in the slot. And then you got Cam Smith, who's kind of like your best bet to be that boundary option. If you think about it this way, that's what you drafted him for. You drafted him last year knowing that you had Jalen Ramsey, knowing that you had Xavien Howard. He was the future. This is the moment you drafted him for. And the good was he showed some real nice potential in training camp, some preseason action as well. Remember back to training camp? I called him Mr. PBU. The dude was getting at least one pass breakup every single training camp practice. The guy was a second-round pick for a reason. You put on that college tape, it's pretty legit. You can see why the Miami Dolphins took him in the second round. But how I said the good, on the other hand, there's the bad. I mentioned him being a second-round pick. He played the least amount of snaps of any defender that was selected in the second round of last year. Not a big positive. Not a big positive, especially when you consider the injuries and the opportunities that were had out there. We saw a lot of Eli Apple last year. We saw some Nick Needham. We saw some Ethan Bonner. There were some opportunities out there. We did not see Cam Smith all that often. We've also been made aware of some of the kind of these like off-field issues with Cam Smith. There's not your typical off-field issues. Basically boils down to, does he put in the time? Is he putting in the time off the practice field, the studying, the mental side of things, that it really truly takes to succeed and become great at the next level? Is he doing that kind of stuff? So those are that's your kind of your breakdown on Cam Smith. We all want him to be there, but based on last year, redshirt season. We mentioned Elijah Campbell. We mentioned Ethan Bonner as well. While I don't mind those guys, especially the little glimpse we saw of Ethan Bonner towards the end of last year, he looked good. He's gotten praise from teammates. He's done fine, but it's a very small sample size. I personally feel a little bit better with maybe some other person on the boundary, keeping those guys as depth pieces. We'll see if Elijah Campbell survived cuts and all that. We'll dive into all that kind of stuff as we get a little bit closer. But quite honestly, if it's not Cam Smith, I would rather have those other guys be more so depth pieces. But let's talk about some guys that maybe aren't in-house right now. Talk about some free agency guys. I got Pro Football Focus's top-rated free agent cornerbacks going on the scroll. Now, there are some stud cornerbacks scheduled to hit free agency. You guys like your Jalen Johnsons, your L'Jarius Sneeds. I think they're going to be a little bit too costly. Remember, this video is about cost savings. But for today's video, I've decided to focus on 3 of these options. And quite honestly, this is me speculating more so than anything. I do want to put that out there. But Chidobe Awuzie, he spent his first 4 years with the Dallas Cowboys. He recorded a single interception on each of those seasons. Did spend the last 3 years with the Cincinnati Bengals, recorded 2 picks his first year, but none the last 2 seasons. Now, I say that knowing that he did tear his ACL in 2022. So he only played in 8 games that year. However, the nice thing, you think, well, he's got to come back from that injury. He did bounce back pretty well in 2023, playing in 15 games. Pro Football Focus graded him at a 62.6 overall last year. And for a reminder, a grade of 50 is what they would consider average. Next one I wanted to single out, Stephon Gilmore. And if you're looking for the seasoned guy, the veteran guy of my list, it is definitely Stephon Gilmore. We talk about Xavien Howard entering that age 31 season. Stephon Gilmore is turning 34 during the upcoming season. He's been in the league since 2012. He's actually been with 4 different teams each of the last 4 years. So obviously, if he joins the Dolphins or an array of other teams, it's going to be 5 for 5. But he did start all 17 games last year for the Dallas Cowboys. He recorded 2 interceptions, 13 pass breakups, and recorded a PFF grade of 74.4. And the last guy I wanted to highlight, Adoree Jackson. He spent his first 4 years with the Titans. If you remember, he went 18th overall in that 2017 NFL draft. Never quite lived up to that billing, but did spend the last 3 years with the New York Giants. He actually started all 14 games that he appeared in last season, recorded 1 interception, made the most of it. He housed that interception as well. However, he did only grade out at 48.6 by Pro Football Focus last year, so a little bit below that average. But man, he's definitely got the experience. 77 career starts. Now, if we look potentially at some draft pick options, sure, there's going to be some guys out there that you may consider with that pick at number 21. But quite honestly, are you going to take a guy at 21 and trust him to jump in and start at boundary opposite Jalen Ramsey when you just took a cornerback last year in the second round? And you know what? He didn't get anything in regards to meaningful playing time. So that's going to weigh on you a little bit. So I don't necessarily think the draft is the time and the opportunity to find your Xavien Howard replacement, at least as it relates to 2024. I have had the draft's top cornerbacks going along on the scroll. I'm not going to take a dive into any of those options today. Likely before the draft, we'll take into some top options at cornerback for this team. But in this particular video, I just don't see any of them being like a day one as soon as Xavien Howard, if he leaves, being that replacement. So that sort of leaves us with one other option, and that other option being the opportunity of guys that you can potentially trade for. Now, this is super tricky because you're not given a list every offseason and say, hey, here are some guys that are available being traded. But if you're looking for some names to potentially keep an eye on as it relates to a trade this offseason, the first name that I would kind of push your way, and this is another option that would end up being a little bit spendy, but Patrick Surtain with the Denver Broncos could be available at the right price. I do know that the Denver Broncos and Miami Dolphins have at least discussed Pat Surtain at some point over the last offseason or so. So we definitely can't rule him out. Another name that you could keep an eye on would be J.C. Horn of the Carolina Panthers as he gets set to enter the final year of his rookie deal. He's a guy he's battled injuries, man. He really hasn't been able to stay on the field all that much since coming in the league in 2021. So the availability hasn't been great, but there's likely some solid potential there if he could just stay on the field. But our team's secondary injuries, don't know if you want to go down that road as well. Like I said, tough to identify some guys at this point of the offseason that might be available via trade, but potential trade is still a possibility. So I at least wanted to bring that up as one of the options. But that is what I have for today. So what are we doing? Are we rolling with Cam Smith? Do we have enough money to pursue a boundary cornerback in free agency? You want to hit a guy in the draft? You want to try to trade for somebody? Let me know your preferred method for if we release Xavien Howard. How do you want to replace his snaps, his production? Drop your thoughts in the comments. That is what I have got for today, Miami Dolphins fans. Thanks to everyone that's tuned in, comment, like, subscribed. If you haven't done so already, make sure you are doing it. Greatly appreciated. That is my time for today, though, Dolphins fans. Until next time, fins up.